So kicking things off, thanks for joining us today, guys. I know this audience is slowly growing and our learning curve on how to use this platform is growing as well. We just want to start off with the mission of Form and who we are and what we're about. And I'm going to read it so I don't miss it. But we are on a mission to reinvent how to use personal training to take care of ourselves through health, happiness, and longevity. We do that through structured, intentional programming that focuses on 6 key aspects of holistic programming. That's movement, nourishment, recovery, mindfulness, health benchmarks, and connection. So that said, today is all about nutrition and making nutrition make sense. And so we have one of our founding trainers. Tell us a little bit about who you are in our company beyond just a trainer, and then a little bit about yourself, Mike.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hey, everybody. If you don't know me already, my name is Mike Ryan. I've been with Form since 2021, and I came aboard as the Director of Live One-to-One Curriculum Development. I worked a lot with the education and PT team to develop our curriculum, and also as a master trainer, founding trainer, enjoying the time spent with my clients, as are they, on the studio and lift. And yeah, my background is in health education, corrective exercise, strength and conditioning, and then most recently now into performance psychology. And I've kind of paired that as an adjunct professor as well at A.T. Still University in the kinesiology department.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, when I put your bio together, I was like, wow, I don't know where this thing starts or where this thing stops. You've got an amazing background. And guys, if you haven't had a chance, look at the post earlier today on all the diversity of background and education that Mike brings to the table. I think it's really relevant and compelling to see that that's the substance that we'll get out of today's conversation with all of the background you have. So good stuff there. Speaking of background, tell me one moment, one client, one discovery for you in your journey, in your professional journey as a trainer and in education, that stands out as a significant milestone for you as a personal trainer and in your fitness journey.
So in my previous role, teaching for another brand, there was an academy that was set up on the weekends for adult learners who were looking to either go into a different career path or just fresh out of school and looking to get a personal training certification. So this curriculum ran on weekends for 7 consecutive weekends. Okay. And this one student would sit in the back. He was very quiet, reserved, and his posture actually mirrored his same personality, the way he communicated in class. So one day on my way, I took the Long Island Railroad and went through Grand Central Terminal, and I was watching a woman walk through the terminal, and she had inflammation in her ankles, and she was almost moving in the frontal plane rather than traveling in a linear path. Wow. So I started to talk to the class that day about how we can kind of extract wellness or well-being through movement, and then inflammation. And it's hard to decipher which came first, but in this particular individual, there was obvious dysfunction in both. So as I was speaking to this particular student was studying Latin at Columbia University at the graduate level. And when he gave his survey at the end of the class, he said, and over the course of time from that day forward, he started to participate more. And his rigid body posture actually turned into like this more mobile type of individual. Yeah. It was fascinating. When he gave his survey for the class, he wrote that while I study a dead language of Latin at the graduate level, I learned from Mike that fitness is a universal language that everyone can speak and will never die. Wow. And I just thought it was well beyond what the intention of that story was and what he took away and how it actually changed his intervention with the other students and his ability to like engage in the class and human movement was fascinating to me. That's awesome. It always stuck in my head.
Love it. You took a language student and showed him the language of fitness and human movement. Yes. That's amazing. To trail on that, what is like maybe where you're most passionate? There's so many things in the fitness and health world. what's the one thing that's like, man, if I can get this into my clients or students or people around me, like what's that one thing for you? What's your driving force?
Competence, like this self-determined ability and wherewithal within the client. And, you know, obviously we're in the business for client retention to build our brand, our personal brand and for form.
Sure.
However, there's nothing, for me, it's very satisfying. I had a client that I worked with on a team of trainers and coaches with a few years back. And after a 3-year stay in New York, his job brought him back to San Francisco. And we took him out to dinner, the three of us did, who were on his team. And he was concerned that, how am I going to do this without you guys? And we basically said, you have the tools. It was almost like taking the leash off, or like as an infant goes through kinesthetic development and you kind of let them go, or you're teaching your kid how to ride a bike, like competent, relatable to their life and what they're looking to do with their goals. And then this autonomy. So even though it's hard to let go of a client, it's very empowering that, you know, you did your job by giving them the necessary tools to have a sustainable behavior throughout life.
That's awesome. I think that's the father in you. I know you're passionate about being a dad, like to give them the tools to go take care of them and be happy and healthy for the rest of life. That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, let's segue that into today's topic on making nutrition make sense. I know you've got a vast background in education, and you can speak at a very high level. And what I want to try and do is bring in all of that knowledge into a very applicable level. So I have just a few questions for you. I'm going to start off with just the very basics. Tell us about the basics of nutrition, apart from diet labels and fads, and like, what are just some of the fundamentals of what people should understand as they look at this big scary word of nutrition and health?
First of all, I think it's valuable to recognize that diet almost implies a short-term fix rather than a lifestyle behavior established platform for yourself. So if we look at meal plans or eating programs or a meal plan lifestyle, it's something that's a little bit more palatable, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But to take that in and understand that this is not a short-term fix, that I'm going to do this for 12 weeks and then I'm going to go off the rails again. And then also, yes, there's a basic understanding that I feel the responsibility of the coach is to present what macronutrients and micronutrients are, that they are essential for performance, fuel, skeletal muscle mass, and overall homeostasis. But there's other things to recognize there that, you know, tangent, dysfunctional, like maybe sickness, joint compromise, how being aware of what foods are causing inflammation, or some type of feedback that this isn't really good for me, or my body's not tolerating this. So it's those type of conversations and basically staying within the 80-20 rule, where don't give yourself, don't beat yourself up if you go off 20% of the time. That other 80% of the time is doing the right thing, and then you give yourself that little bit of freedom. You kind of want to get back onto the 80.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that 20% because it's earned and deserved, and it really does balance out that other 80%. You said some big words: macronutrients, micronutrients, homeostasis. Tell me on the macro and micro, and the 1-minute version. What are those, and why do those matter, and how we filter through and understand what nutrition is?
Well, the macros are going to be your basic food groups based upon protein, carbs, fats, where your caloric density is going to come from it and provide necessary fuels for your body. The micros are going to be more of the vitamins, minerals that you may not be getting, and you are essential. It's essential to the body for us to supplement them in either through food or supplementation. And I just want to pause there for a second, that the prefix to supplement is to supplement food. So to live on supplements without the foundation of the basic nutrients, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're not going to get the value that you want from that.
Absolutely.
And then the homeostasis is basically finding a level of balance in the body where all the markers that you would get on your annual physical are in the normal ranges, which are not triggers for any type of metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease, or inflammation.
Great. Okay, so to translate some of that, I understand the macros are like the carbs, the proteins, the fat, and within each of those, there's micronutrients, the actual substance of vitamins and minerals. And we could say good, bad. There are good carbs, bad carbs, or dense or empty, or good lean proteins versus fatty proteins, or saturated, unsaturated, healthy, unhealthy fats. Yeah. How do we? I know that's a half hour. I just fed you something you could talk on for half an hour. What do we do with that? How do we translate that into an everyday diet and menu? Like, cool, carbs, proteins, fats exist. Micronutrients of nutrients exist in those. What am I supposed to do with that on it? Like, what do I eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner now that I know that?
Great question. And to kind of simplify that, I very much support the hand portion recommendations by Precision Nutrition.
Great.
And then, so ensure for males or for all, but if performance is higher, you're going to go with 1 to 2 palm servings of protein per meal. Basically what you can grab in vegetables, leafy greens, what have you, cruciferous vegetables, and then a cup of your hand with a starchy potato or yam, rice, whatever that be, lean and from the ground. And then for fat is the thumb length.
Okay.
So basically, if you stick to those and you're getting it from wholesome foods, complete proteins will have the necessary amino acid content in it that is going to give you the building blocks for other things beyond skeletal muscle mass. And if you stick with the hand recommendations, you're probably going to influx all the micronutrients that you did. And then there's the water factor, right?
Sure.
Many people think they drink enough, but empirical research would suggest that 50% of your body weight in water a day, converted to ounces, is ideal for performance, not only in athletic performance, but activities of daily living, brain function, joint health, you name it.
Awesome. Okay, I love that concept of thinking of my hands. For a meal, I'm gonna grab. You said 1 to 2 grabs of lean protein.
Palms.
Also,
Palm.
1 to 2 palms, and then 2 grabs of vegetables or colorful plants.
We could keep it there, just at 1, and then the cup for starch.
Okay.
And start from there.
Great.
And then build it out.
Yeah.
And then
the thumb of olive oil or whatever healthy fat you want to toss in there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. On that, what are some of the more common challenges or confusions that you see in clients that you work with? Like, that sounds simple. That's a place to start. I can take that and be like, oh, so like for me personally, if I try to get a chicken salad every day, doesn't have to be the same brand, doesn't have to be the same flavors and mix, but like that's one base for me. And then I try to make sure I have a different but lean meat and a side of different types of vegetables or potatoes in my evening. And then I build sauces or fats around that. That's my close to getting started, right? And then I'll supplement, and then I'll do nutrition and all that. But like, what are the biggest challenges you see of people saying like, oh man, that still sounds overwhelming. I still don't know what to do.
And that's it. They bring on, the client often brings on unnecessary stress on themselves, trying to revamp things that they have been doing traditionally their entire lives, and in a week expect to make these radical changes. And it becomes overwhelming and beyond sustainable. So this time there is pun intended, but what is the lowest hanging fruit? What appears to be just literally hanging in your face that if I could modify this some way, whether add something or take something away that is contributing to increased body fat or the way I'm feeling, if I eliminated 50% of the time the first week,
Great.
So basically meeting the client where they are and what their skills are versus what the challenges are.
Great. That's awesome. What comes to mind is the thought of you can't eat unhealthy food you didn't buy. Like when clients are saying, I just snack on chips all the time. I can't. That they're in their cup. Like, well, then don't buy them, and that won't be a
Exactly.
problem.
Oh, I eat too much ice cream. Well, what can we do about
Yeah.
that? Cut it down from a cup to a couple tablespoons, and maybe just don't buy it.
There you go.
You
Bingo.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for that 20% rule, like yeah.
Yeah. Or
But
maybe,
if you stock it up in your home,
yeah.
then you're really threatening yourself on that 20% threshold. So yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, say for instance, Haagen-Dazs has the individual serving. Like,
Great.
all right, you want your 20%? Buy 1 to 2 of those for the entire week. Not that you have a whole like gallon tub of ice cream sitting there that you constantly just sit there with a spoon.
Totally.
So you're kind of given a defined portion size, and before and after that, that's it.
Great. That's awesome. That kind of covers my next question on what would you suggest to someone struggling with their nutrition? Maybe you could lean into that a little bit more. How can they find a way that is right for them? I don't want to throw that out lightly. It's easy as someone who has habitual patterns of nutrition, we forget that, man, habits are real and they get formed over time, and there are cycles that are really hard to break.
Mm-hmm.
So someone just like, oh, easy for you to say, don't buy the snacks. Emotions go into that, life goes into that. Like, what do you suggest for someone who's really struggling to apply healthy habits in their nutrition?
I think with the power of habit, there is a way to replace less optimal habits with better ones by piggyback them on something that you would do consistently throughout your day. So if you're not drinking enough water, and Jonathan, and for you and I are in a coaching conversation, and you're saying like, I don't know when to do it, or I just don't like it. Like, well, maybe in the morning you have a cup of coffee, but we agree that you're going to have 6 ounces of water before you have your coffee. You're already having your coffee. So, you know,
Yeah, great.
You kind of add, piggybacking is a good way, because habits don't just go away. It's usually a new habit replaces that habit, whether it's good or bad, the original one. So kind of replacing or kind of segueing in, and one at a time, one variable at a time, let the individual own these new behaviors rather than feeling overwhelmed that there's too many moving parts. Own one, build confidence, build that autonomy that we talked about earlier, and then that self-determination. Say, okay, I did this already, let's build upon it.
That's awesome. I appreciate the grace you have on that, because I think people do get scared and overwhelmed, like, oh, I either got to get my act together and perfect my diet or not, and I've got to like train 5 days a week or it's a waste. But yeah, one diet, one adjustment at a time, one habit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically water in the morning. It's funny, I picked this habit up, probably 15 years ago, but I'll have 30 ounces of water first thing in the morning to preload my hydration. Mm-hmm. And then I go get my coffee. But yeah, that one little habit has stuck with me for probably 2 decades now. And it sure does take care of a lot. Like, I never have a problem with dehydration because that little habit fixed it all. Same with, I aim for a chicken salad for every lunch. Like, I don't always get it, and sometimes I don't want it, but I know at least the majority of the time I'm getting leafy greens and lean meat in my day, if that's my one anchor. And new and different habits will take care of other things than that. So
Don, may I ask, just for those who kind of are admiring this conversation, did you start at 30 ounces though in the morning originally?
No, I just started with like a protein shaker, right? And then I learned over time, like, you alluded to half of your body weight in pounds and ounces. Yes. So it's 200-pound man, 100 ounces. So I just said, if I could get a third of that, which is like roughly a liter. So sorry for all the math there. Yeah. So for me, 3 liters a day, if I get one of those in at the first thing, I don't have to play catch up. I just have to maintain throughout the day. So,
and those who are listening, if you find 33 ounces to sound overwhelming, like Jonathan said, get a bottle, and maybe you start with, 8, 12, 16 ounces at first, and progress your way up with the goal of filling that bottle in the morning for the third of the day. But you don't have to start with that. Build it up, and that's the habit.
And exactly. To that point, it used to be like, oh, this is a lot of water, and right now it's just like pound it and get on with my day. Yeah. That's great. Well, we've talked about nutrition. We talked about the 80-20 rule. I want to get into how, I know a lot of people have fitness goals, but those fitness goals are like, what do I have to put up with, and what do I have to sacrifice in nutrition so that I can lose body fat or gain muscle? Those always highlight as the top two fitness goals. They seem like. Are there? I know you're passionate about one other thing that is a measurable goal in fitness, and I want to ask, how much does nutrition really matter when it comes to attaining those goals?
I that I don't. First of all, there's a lot of answers that go into that. It's not single fold, but it goes from a performance aspect, the physical capacity, the nourishment for the brain to remain focused, be hydrated, the psychological component that goes to it. So the nutrition has so much that goes into setting goals, because without proper fuel in more than what's physically obvious, those goals that are set may never come to fruition, or you may get kind of bumped off the rails well before goal attainment.
Sure. And so with that, if can I, well, I'll just jump to a punchline. I know in the fitness world, can you out train a bad diet? Can I just like eat my junk food? And I'll ask as a coming on middle-aged man, I'm starting to see like what I could get away with, unhealthy fats or starches. They're now starting to affect me, but that was only measuring through fat loss and muscle gaining. But what you're learning, and now I'm discovering way more of, is the inflammation factor and how much nutrition plays into that. Speak into that just a little bit, because I think it's the quiet monster in the room when it comes to nutrition and how it affects us for health and longevity long term.
I'll give you an example through experience. So in 2013, I had my first of 2 hip replacements. Okay. And this was the left hip. And I understood that inflammation is a part of healing. And we can't hustle that process. But what we can do is kind of diminish adding unnecessary inflammation to what the body is already producing. So I made a mindful effort I recognized that 5 inflammatory foods, sodium, alcohol, sucrose, or abundance of like simple sugars, dairy and gluten were 5 food groups that I noticed gave me adverse effects. And, sometimes when I thought about it, the pizza and a glass of wine, although it's comforting, right, and very supportive, and on a winter day, whatever it may be, all 5 of those things are in there. And I started to recognize that after that type of meal, even though it was sensational and the flavor, for those 10, 15 minutes, there was consequences afterwards. And as I individually did an elimination diet of gluten and dairy separately, I recognized that I didn't have head congestion. I was no longer getting seasonal allergies, and then the sinus infection that would follow several summers in a row. And then also with the gluten factor, when I went back to work after the recovery, people had asked if I lost 15, 20 pounds, when really it was like 5 or 6. It was just bloat, gut distension, indigestion, things like that had immensely improved. And my joints felt better too.
Awesome.
So keeping in mind of what those foods are as they go into your body, but how they contribute to inflammation is significant for your ability to train at a high level, sustainable levels, remaining, thwarting sickness, traditional sickness, and then sticking to your goals.
Great.
So sustainability is important to the nutrition factor and goal success.
Okay. So for someone who, the 5 you listed off, if they're like, those are my 5 food groups.
Yeah.
And it sounds overwhelming, and it's like, never mind, I guess I'll just fail at this. Based on the advice you gave earlier, could they start with 1 and eliminate it for 30 days and reassess? How would you approach specifically those 5? Because you just nailed most of the problems of inflammation and the fat buildup and the muscle not building the way they were hoping it would in the weight room. How would you approach filtering through those and adjusting your diet accordingly?
Recognize how you physically feel after eating such a meal, or for me, I was recognizing cottage cheese, milk, traditional yogurts were causing just a GI disruption.
Wow.
I was noticing similar things with gluten. So for me, those two were ideal. Sodium has never been an additional factor other than from pink Himalayan salt.
Great.
Alcohol, I'd have a glass of wine, with a meal on the weekends. It was not. So those were the two things that were heavy in my diet and in my meal plan. So and to your point, I highly recommend, if you're going to do something like this, do one at a time so you can really recognize, and give it 10 to 14 days so you're fully eliminated from it. Journal how you're feeling, changes that you've noticed, introduce it again, maybe a day or two after that 10-day hiatus, and then journal again if you return to previous inflammation reactions, and then proceed to the second one. Wow,
that's great. That's fantastic advice. So 2 weeks of no pizza, see how you feel.
Yeah.
Come back, try it, and see the real effect of it.
Well, to clarify, not so much the food itself, but the trigger in the food.
The gluten,
pizza, you're getting
gluten and dairy.
Yeah. So think maybe just dairy this week, maybe gluten next week. Table sucrose. I have a client who was drinking 9 cups of coffee a day.
Wow. And
he identified his goal for the first 2 weeks of our program, our nutrition coaching, was to stop adding sugar to his coffee. Well, now he's down to no coffee at all, because he found he doesn't really enjoy it without the sugar, and he no longer has the sugar craving. So now he's drinking tea.
Wow.
Yeah, like herbal teas, non-caffeinated teas. And it works. Yeah, he finds the mint replaced the need for the caffeine, and now there's no sugar. Maybe a touch of honey, but like 3 or 4 packs of sugar in each coffee. Now times 9, that's a lot of empty calories.
Yeah,
so for him,
that's awesome.
Was the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm sure, our VOD classes where I train, I say, what's the next one thing you can get done for yourself? Like, focus on that next one thing. And typically our human behavior, there is one thing that comes to mind for people. And if you just make that a habit in your life, like, what's the next one thing, you eventually phase out all of the negative habits and build up all of the positive ones for a healthy
great book, The One Thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And the mantra is, what is the one thing that you can do now immediately that by doing so either makes everything else easier or unnecessary?
Awesome. Love it. All right. Last question on nutrition here. I knew we'd go a little long just because I knew you'd have a lot to say, but of all the diets, all the fad diets, like, people leaving here like, so what do I do now? Do I go for do I do paleo? Do I do vegan? What's intermittent fasting? What's like high carb, low fat? Fast food diet? What do I do from here? Is there one to research and go after, or where do I go from here?
I would not encourage one specific way. I would go back to thinking about the way I frame the conversation is talking about what their go-tos are, what their comforts are, and find what's deficient, what's over in abundance that may be causing adverse reactions, unwanted body fat. And then from there, meet the client where they are. Making suggestions that is out of their wheelhouse at that point in time, where the challenge grossly outweighs what their skill is going to be super challenging and maybe even discouraging. So let's find one thing the first couple, and every 10 days to 2 weeks, we'll revisit how that looks, check in. If you're successful, let's move on and build upon that. If not, let's stick with it. And I've had clients on both ends of that, where I need another 2 weeks with this habit, Mike, or that wasn't as challenging as I thought, and actually I feel great. How can we shift this on the continuum a little more favorably for me?
Great. So what you're saying is, don't sign up for a specific diet. Sign up for a behavior pattern.
Yes.
Of, I'm going to try eliminating one thing for 2 weeks that is typically labeled as unhealthy or unbeneficial for my body, and or adding something beneficial for 2 weeks, and just committing to that path rather than a diet or a label or a title. It's committing to a lifestyle, a habit pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lifestyle. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then that becomes lifestyle.
Yes,
the
but
rest of
basically,
life, I'm sure you're still discovering.
what is that? What is either in the way or an opportunity that you've never done, but you feel you should be doing, and we can work on it from either angle.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, last question. This one's a bit more personal. What's one message, one takeaway you would want to leave anyone on this conversation with to inspire them in their nutrition journey?
It would have to be notice and name what you're feeling, why you're opting to eat something or not eat it, and understand that if you do go to eat that, whatever it is, right, is it because it's something you want and rather than you need, or is it something your body needs more than you want? In either scenario, what are the consequences of eating that? So, like we talked about the pizza and wine, I know I wasn't diagnosed with a gluten intolerance or dairy intolerance, but I know I feel better since I took them out. So if I have a glass or two of wine and 2 to 3 slices of pizza, man, it tastes so good in the moment. But the next morning, my stomach is off. I'll have restless night's sleep. I'll have a headache. I'll feel dehydrated. I could feel the like edema in my hands. So, man, was that really worth 15 minutes of like a savory, fulfillment? Because now I'm regretting what I did. So just understand consequences that come from your nutrition behaviors and how that's going to affect your goals. Because this is something that we are in control in. It's not like your coach or you, Jonathan, or handing somebody something to eat. Because as a coach, that's out of our skill set. But we can make recommendations to create discrepancies where this works a certain way, this works a certain way. I know how I feel here and here. If I don't do either one of these, or if I choose one of these, what happens in between what is that discrepancy, and how does that affect my personal health, goals, and training?
Awesome. I love it. I'm going to just piggyback on that just a little to think even the healthy patterns, asking what's the outcome of, maybe it's not always consequences, but what's the outcome of this choice? And you'll start to see when the healthy choices are chosen, it elevates. Like you mentioned something briefly. I just want to touch on it before we leave, because we talked a lot. You talked a lot about how you feel, but people saw how you looked based on 2 weeks of changed behavior in diet and nutrition. So that to me, like for some viewers, that's all they need to hear. Like, I'm going to look better if I do this. I don't care how I feel. But that you literally physically will look better, and that the outcome of those habits start to show up visibly. So I love it. Obviously you're well-versed and passionate about it. I appreciate the work you're doing, and your continued study, that you're continuing to get educated so that you can provide more value for people, and perform. We appreciate your voice and your heart with our team, and have loved having you on here. Any final thoughts? I kind of did just ask for your final thoughts, but share them now. Otherwise, that's all I've got from you.
No, I'm thankful to be invited on today, and I think the series that you're hosting is is beneficial for our listeners, our staff, and the brand itself. So it's job well done.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm educated and inspired on this conversation. So
all right,
back at you.
All right.
Great talking with you, Mike.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. Take care. Bye.